All right, everyone. Well, welcome to week 7. This week's theme is consumption and materialism. And last week, first of all, I wanted to mention, I don't know why this is popping up all of a sudden, but it's for whatever reason, it's popping up in the overview. It's all this weird text. It's actually relevant, but I don't know what it's doing there. So there's a little drop down arrow here. You just click that, and it'll bring up the actual content. So, a little overview of this week. Review of last week before we do the overview of this week. So remember last week we went over to alternatives to GDP and GDP per capita. The idea being that we really want an economy that helps maximize quality of life. In order to do that, we need to be able to measure quality of life, hence the metrics that we went over last week. We also just went over some of the general reasons why GDP is not the best. Remember that RFK Sr., or the original RFK, I guess you could say, that little speech from him, which I think was really powerful. And so we went over the Human Development Index, the Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, the Genuine Progress Indicator, the Happiness Index. We went over Triple Bottom Line briefly, and we also went over B Corps. So these are all alternatives to GDP. It seemed like these kind of resonated with you, so I wanted to share. This is based on the feedback from your questions last week. I wanted to share some additional information about these metrics. So if I can get this back here. So first of all, I can't see, I'm sorry. There it is. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, actually we'll start with this one. So a couple of you had questions about the happiness index and specifically how do we measure it and what does that all mean? And this was briefly indicated, I think, in the readings, but this happiness index is based on what's called the Cantril ladder, right here, the Cantril ladder. And it's pretty simple in principle. You ask a respondent to think of a ladder, hence the name, with the best possible life for them being a 10, so we're at the top, and the worst being a 0. And then they simply rank where they are on the ladder. And that's the happiness index, basically. So it asks people in sort of a real-time assessment of how satisfied they are with their life. Okay, so it's the life satisfaction. And then, of course, they do statistical analyses. They do surveys across countries. So this is a great site. This is Our World in Data, if you're not familiar with it. Highly recommended. Awesome site. And what it does, it pulls in all the data from all over the place, and including a lot of the things that we look at in this class. So this actually shows you a map of the happiness index for each country across the world, right? So the United States is 6.72. That's okay. The happiest countries you can see up here, we have our Sweden, Norway, 7.3, 7.34, Finland. So they're at the top. Denmark, I'm sure, is up there as well. Yep. So they're always in the top. Australians are pretty high too, which if you ever met an Australian, they're pretty happy. It's kind of anecdotal, but anyway, so you can explore this data if you want. You can download the data. It shows you where they got the data. And so that's one reason why I really like this site, is because it provides sources, and there's just so much. I mean, you can look at all of these here. They actually show some charts that sort of integrate this data into some other ones. So let's look at like self-reported life satisfaction versus GDP per capita. So they actually show this chart, which is dynamic, and you can like go back in time and it slides around. It's all really cool stuff. This website is just absolutely incredible. And again, you can download the data at any point if you want to. And you can see a general relationship here between income per capita and life satisfaction. So pretty good relationship, although there are some outliers, right? So relatively wealthy that's low on the scale, and then relatively, not so high income that are pretty high on the scale, right? So you can play around with the data, but that's the Cantril ladder, aka the happiness index. Human Development Index, this is the United Nations. I don't know if you can see this up here, so that's your website, but it's just UN Human Development Index. I just Googled United Nations HDI. And so there's a video here, but you can explore all these data. I mean, these are all the countries in the world color coded. over time. You can see it's 1990 through 2022. And then you can select, you can filter all you want. You can just add countries and do individual countries. If I want to do, say, let's say Afghanistan, because the first one highlights that. And so you can basically explore the data, and you can download the data. So this is all publicly available data. All right, so there's your Human Development Index. Here's your Inequality Adjusted Human Development Index, same type of deal. You can go by country. Again, just if you're into data and you want to explore it a little more deeply than we did in class, these websites are really great. And again, this is just the United Nations over here. So yeah, that's a little bit more data. And then this was really interesting if you're not familiar with the gross national happiness. This is kind of one of the earlier attempts at sort of an alternative to GDP, and this is from actually Bhutan. Well, that's where it started anyway, is Bhutan. And so they go over some of these other indicators. So here's your genuine progress indicator. They have more data here. A better life index. So like I said, there's a bunch of other metrics out there. And so this is just a website that I find was pretty helpful. Another one that we didn't go over, but I did want to share just because it is something that's pretty well known. So this is from Our World in Data, if you see up here, Our World in Data. So this is the Democracy Index, which is an indicator of democracy. And there are democracies obviously all over the world. Some are greater than others. I mean, technically Russia is a democracy, although it's really an autocracy and a kleptocracy. But it basically gives you a ranking from 0 to 10 of the lowest to highest. You can see the United States, we're at about 7.8. So, we maintained pretty steady over time. And what does that mean? Well, basically that means, where did we go? We should go back here. Oops. There we go. And so it's basically extent to which citizens can choose their political leaders in free and fair elections, enjoy civil liberties, prefer democracy over the system. So this is a statistical analysis, a survey, basically, and they also do research on the actual extent of democracy. So another index, not exactly a quality of life, but another thing that you may be into. Again, you can download the data as well. Okay, so that's a little review and a little bit of expansion of the stuff we talked about last week. So hopefully you kind of keep thinking about this, because this is really, really important. And some of you did provide this feedback, but if we are ever going to establish a sustainable society, we're going to need to use something besides GDP and even HDI, which is good, but there's I guess some inadequacies of that even. So we need to figure out a new way to measure how we're doing as a society, and these are some of the main ways that we can do it. And so I hope that you keep thinking about this. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody that you can, because we need people to think about this stuff, because once you think about it, and I think hopefully that you feel this way, it makes sense. It's common sense. Like GDP, whatever. I mean, GDP is only good if it gets us the things that provide high quality of life. And of course, we need to consider the environmental impact. And in that vein, remember, we do have the Happy Planet Index, right? So you can explore the data. You can look at the map of the different, and this map is really cool because it's interactive. If you haven't looked at this, I suggest you do it. You can click on a country, it gives you your Happy Planet Index. It tells you how it came up with that score. So this is a mixture of life expectancy, well-being, but then they divide it by your carbon footprint. And so what I like about this is it basically, the higher your carbon footprint, the lower your Happy Planet Index. And so that's a good way to integrate environmental sustainability into the metric. So you have a report here. You can download the data. Again, this is great. The data are out there. So I hope you explore that. Okay. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. It's really important, and so I'm glad that from what I could tell, everyone was really kind of thinking about this data or thinking about the information pretty deeply, and I hope you continue to do that.